front of this computer. All right, cool. So welcome.
Great, thank you so much. So I want to start out today by doing a little bit of face-to-face conversation, and then I do have a visual that I will share with you, some visuals, some audio as well. And I'm going to put the title of my talk in the chat. So I've titled it Ecomusicology, Sounding the Alarm. And I want to start today about thinking about the title of the talk, Ecomusicology, and then sounding the alarm. And so I thought it would be more fair for me to go ahead and define ecomusicology for you. And then I'm going to have you think about what sounding the alarm might mean. So I have pulled from a resource that I use a lot with my music students called Oxford Music Online. And so this is how Oxford defines ecomusicology. Ecomusicology, or eco-critical musicology, is the study of music, culture, and nature in all the complexities of those terms. Ecomusicology considers musical and sonic issues, both textual and performative, related to ecology and the natural environment. Interest in ecomusicology has paralleled increasing environmental concerns in North America since 1970, a period of greening in academia when environmental social sciences as well as the humanities. The term ecomusicology gained currency in the decades around 2000 in North American and Scandinavian academic circles. So that's a long definition to highlight ecomusicology crosses disciplines. So it's not just about music, it's not just about the environment, it's not just about culture, but about all of these things working alongside each other. And it's also a relatively new field. It's not something that's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. We're talking about 50-ish is a good estimate. So now that we have a definition of ecomusicology, let's think about sounding the alarm. So if we say we're going to sound an alarm, what does that actually mean? And you can put your thoughts in the chat. You can unmute yourself and say something fantastic, your choice. But what does it mean to sound an alarm?
I could say something. Bringing like awareness to the topic that you're talking about or singing about, I guess, in this sense.
Yeah, good. I like that. Bringing awareness. Good, good. What are other thoughts? Thank you, Kaylee, for getting us started.
All right, Chase.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, bringing awareness, kind of just bringing attention to something that has been overlooked for a long time.
Okay, good. I like
that's basically the same thing as bringing awareness, but yeah, that's.
But you used a different word, Chase. You used attention, which I think awareness and attention are things that can go side by side, but they're not necessarily the same thing. So I like that. Attention and awareness. Any other thoughts? If you sound an alarm, is it typically something that you think of as a positive, negative, or neutral?
Mia just put something in the chat. She said to warn.
I just saw that, yes. And that's the first thing that I thought of when I thought of sounding the alarm, to warn. And there's often, like Kevin is saying, a sense of urgency that goes along with it. And so I think I really like the two words that came up first, this idea of awareness and attention, because they're not necessarily negative. I think warning and the sense of urgency can have a sense of negativity attached to it. And what I would like to do today is call attention to some things that I've looked at and presented to my students, because I actually have a whole Quest class built on this idea of ecomusicology, sounding the alarm. And in addition to calling attention, you might even say that celebrating something can be a type of sounding the alarm in a very positive kind of way. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint with you, and we'll use that for the rest of the hour. I'm still going to ask you to very much participate in the chat or by unmuting yourself. So it'll be an active class, but I do want you to have some visuals. All right. And I also want to pull the chat up, but I'll do that as I need it. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to consider is a work by the composer John Cage. John Cage is an American composer, but one that's considered avant-garde, someone that very often writes in an unorthodox way or in a non-traditional way. So what we're going to start with is a little bit out of the box, but I like it. Before we have the experience of listening to Child of Tree, I do also want to think of two words, to listen and to hear. So Child of Tree, just to be clear, is not the piece that he's setting up in his piano right now, but he is known for adjusting the piano by putting things in between the strings. So if you're wondering what he's doing in that image, John Cage is making a prepared piano, putting objects between the strings. So I mentioned I want to talk about listening and hearing before we look at and watch Child of Tree. So listen, when we have this defined, is to give one's attention to sound. Hearing is to perceive with the ear the sound made by someone or something. It could also mean to listen or pay attention to. So when I'm looking at those two words, I think of one as active, and then I think of one as either active or passive. Which one looks completely active to you?
Listen.
Listen, I would agree. Listen, because you are giving your attention to the sound. In terms of hearing, you could be listening, or you could be just perceiving sound around you, like background noise. Or I'm assuming many of you probably have studied or done homework with music in the background. You're hearing it, but you're not necessarily listening to it. So we're going to watch a performance of Child of Tree, not the whole thing because it's a little longer than I want to spend on one particular topic, but we're going to watch part of this performance by the British percussionist, Rosie Bergonzi. And as you watch, I want to know if you are hearing or if you are listening and why you're doing one or the other, or why you feel like you're doing one or the other. So we'll go ahead and give this a watch. You would think this worked just fine beforehand. So give me just a second. I feel like I know what the problem is. Let's do that and try again.
John Cage, Child of Tree.
So that's about half of the piece, or her performance of this piece, because every performance you're going to see of this piece is going to be different. Did you find yourself listening or hearing, and why?
I would say more hearing, just because I would probably need some sort of understanding as to what Child of Tree was beforehand. And then if I had some sort of understanding, maybe then I could go into that listening category.
Do you feel like, Kaylee, that you want to know how to listen to it? Is that a fair question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. I am a type A person and I totally understand what you're saying. Nathan also put something in the chat here. I'd say hearing more so because the sounds presented in the song are more natural and background than something that's intended to be in the forefront of your mind, like a big band jazz performance. Good. So the sounds that we're hearing, I think we could probably all agree, are not typical in the sense of music making. They are very different kinds of sounds. And in fact, she's improvising a lot. She's exploring what kinds of sounds she can make with the objects that she has. Later on, she does play a cactus, and that in and of itself is just kind of fun to watch. But for the sake of time, we'll move on.
Don't play cactuses. You don't want to get hurt.
True, you don't want to poke yourself, but they actually make really interesting noises. But I want to move on and show you what the score actually looks like. So here is an example from the score. I'm going to let you look at that for just a moment and think about the question, what are the instruments? What are you seeing that's being played?
Well, I noticed that John Cage wrote, this is not your typical score where there would be music notes.
Right.
The score itself are just notes. It's in language format, and it's saying find 10 instruments,
Right.
one of which is a pod or a rattle from a, what is it?
It's a particular tree, and it's
Oh,
hard
okay,
to
got you.
read.
Ponciana
Yeah.
tree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think in Puerto Rico, that's the national tree. It's called the flamboyant in Puerto Rico. It's
Okay.
colorful, and it has like these seeds that have like the rattle, I think. Yeah.
Mhm. Right. So I love how Dr. Ruiz is saying you're finding 10 instruments, and you're finding instruments that are natural instruments or things that come from the natural world.
Mhm.
I don't want to suggest that there is a right way or a wrong way to engage with this work. But the way that I think about this work is it's a work that makes me reevaluate how I'm listening and what I am listening to. So to go back to Kaylee, and I asked her, do you want to know how to listen to this work? I could tell you maybe some things to listen for or timbres to pay attention to. But I think the better thing is just to take it at face value and start thinking about what you're hearing, how you're listening, what may or may not have value, or what this particular piece suggests is valuable. So I tend to think of it as more of a thinking kind of piece as opposed to a piece that has a right or wrong kind of interpretation or way of hearing or listening. So in this sense, I'm using this piece as a sound the alarm kind of example because it is implying to me as I'm listening to it that there is value in nature. And by listening to these different sounds of nature, I'm reminded of that value that nature has. Nature makes sound, and it makes very interesting sounds. Okay, let's go to some more conventional things. So many composers write far more tuneful, far more melodic or rhythmic works that spotlight a particular cause. So spotlighting a cause, I think, is a very clear way to sound an alarm. It could be something that is raising money for a particular cause. It could be something that is spotlighting or celebrating, a animal, a organization. It could be any number of things. So what I have chosen to show you as an example comes from the Guide to Birdsong Project So this is a project that is the brainchild of the English DJ, composer, and producer by the name of Robert Perkins. The CD cover that I have on the screen right now is from a 2020 album where the composers / audio engineers are sampling sounds of endangered birds. You will notice in the bottom right corner of that CD cover, the birds are from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So this particular CD spotlights those areas. Other CDs or recordings are going to spotlight other areas. So what he does with this particular CD recording, and then the project in a larger sense, is he invites artists from the geographical areas where the birds are endangered or threatened, and invites them to create songs built around the bird songs of those birds. So there's use of electronic music, but there's also use of sampling of bird sounds. So what I am going to show you a little bit of is a piece called Numoto Caronado by Tamara Montenegro. She's a Nicaraguan artist, and she has chosen to use a bird called the guardabarranco. This is the national bird of Nicaragua. It represents freedom, and it is threatened by deforestation. So in the example I played for you, you're going to hear a lot of electronic sounding noises, but in a much more rhythmic way than we heard in Child of Tree. The bird, so you have a visual, is off to the right, and then she does incorporate some of the bird song into her music. Perkins has said about his project that the whole project was born out of this idea of taking the songs of endangered birds and challenging musicians to make a piece of music from them. And so trying to marry these worlds of activism, of conservation, birdsong, and electronic music. Hopefully people will come away from the album feeling inspired and feeling the need to listen again to the birdsong around them and to do something to protect the natural spaces that we need to survive. Other artists turn more to lyrics. So I have another example here, and the song is called My Dirty Stream. It has another name as well, the Hudson River Song. Either name is fine. This is a song by Pete Seeger, and it comes from an album from 1966. So the album is called God Bless the Grass, and in the album as a whole, he focuses on issues of pollution, overdevelopment, and resource waste. It is arguably the first album dedicated to songs of environmental protest. So I want to set up this song with a little bit of background. There's the album image I forgot to put up there. So now you see Pete Seeger and you see the album cover. So Pete Seeger is someone that has been very involved with environmental causes. He started becoming a public speaker, if you will, at least publicly speaking about environmental concerns around 1958. In that year, he speaks to a radio interviewer and talks about river waste and pollution. In 1963, he writes publicly in a column of his own called Sing Out, and he speaks about problems with pollution. In 1965, he records this album, which comes out in 1966. To provide a little bit of larger context, he is also functioning in a time around 1966 with this album where there's an emerging environmental movement. At this time, it's mainly middle-class white Americans that are pushing this movement forward, but it's interesting to note, or good to note, because there's an audience for this music at the time. He's not just writing about it and no one's listening to it. There's already a contingent of people that are fighting the same kind of fight that I am sure were listening. And then there were other people, I am sure, also listening and hearing his music. So I have for you a snippet of the song My Dirty Stream, and the lyrics that I have are going to match what I've got in the recording.
Sailing down my dirty stream, still I love it, and I'll keep the dream that someday, though maybe not this year, my Hudson River will once again run clear. It starts high in the mountains of the north, crystal clear and icy trickles forth, with just a few floating wrappers of chewing gum, dropped by some hikers to warn of things to come. At Glens Falls, 5,000 honest hands work at the consolidated paper plant. 5 million gallons of waste a day. Why should we do it any other way? Down the valley, 1 million toilet chains. Find my Hudson so convenient place to drain. And each little city says, who me? Do you think that sewage plants come free?
So Seeger's clearly drawing attention to 3 pollution problems within the Hudson River. So big business polluting the water, and then also sewage. So he's very clearly sounding an alarm about the Hudson River in a pretty conventional kind of way, using song lyrics, using words to sound that alarm. Here's a problem, let me shine a light on it, let's try to fix it. So he actually does quite a bit of work to try to help fix this problem. He founds the Clearwater Organization in 1969, so a little bit after this album and song come out. The Hudson River was very clearly polluted and needed cleaning up. So he did a lot of work to help that goal come to fruition. And this organization still exists today. One last quick example that I have of an artist using lyrics is one that might be more culturally relevant to all of you in this class. So Childish Gambino's recent Feels Like Summer is a nice summer song, but if you actually listen closely to the lyrics, he is addressing climate change. So I'm going to play a little bit of that here.
On a day like this, the heat, it feels like summer. I feel like summer. I feel like summer. Every
And I realized I cut that off before the rest of the lyrics were sung. But he has hope, at least in the way that he's singing the song. He has hope that the world will change. It still seems the same day to day, but maybe in the future, we will be better partners with our planet. Okay, so popular music is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. In my Quest class, we spend time talking about popular music from different decades, and we looked at 2 examples here. We also popular music concerts. So I have an example here. This is a little over a decade old. U2, I'm hoping most of you are very familiar with U2, even if you don't.
That was last week's presentation. I gave them an introduction on YouTube. They have a whole PowerPoint about this. So this is perfect. And by the way,
Yay.
you know, what we talk about in this class also are you know, for basically what was taken into consideration to even get the sound, the music across to the respective audiences. So what was the marketing strategy and you know, maybe even how the song is packaged. So like this is a perfect example what you're talking about with with Gambino's music, that, you know, it's a tough message, but you see that it was again much like Marvin Gaye. And matter of fact, sounds a lot like Marvin Gaye's music. It's done in a way that's more like a kind of, you know, a slow jam romantic kind of thing. You can just go like this, you know what I mean? And but it's to get you to vibe, relate, connect with one another, but also, you know, it's meant for you to, you know, it's what in hip hop culture we call it conscious music, you know, conscious rap. But even though it's not rap, it's just the idea of to make you consciously aware of issues. And so there you go. And we know Childish Gambino has always been, you know, socially inclined. I have him in my unit for political activism. So yeah, really cool. Yeah, for some other songs, but yeah, go ahead.
No, that's great. He's so many layers to that artist and his work. It's amazing. So U2 had a tour between 2009 and 2011. So it was a long tour, multiple tours within a tour, if you will. And they had something called an enviro writer. Does anyone know what a writer is? So a band often comes with at least one writer, more than one writer usually. But artists in general, performing groups have a writer. Has anybody heard of this?
No, that's not this particular class. I teach a writer, how to develop a writer for strategic music entrepreneurship development, which falls under contracts. But basically a writer is a list of all the things that you need in the protocol for when you arrive to the event. And so, you know, that could include, you know, what food, how many microphones, you know, the whole stage plot, you know, indication when the check is to be delivered, what kinds of, you know, do we need multimedia? Do we need projector? All of that stuff that provides the backline people the information needed so that you can make it as comfortable as possible for when you arrive to the location. That's what a writer is.
Right. So in a sense, it's like a performance contract. You have a technical writer, you would have a hospitality writer. And so exactly like Dr. Ruiz is describing, it helps set up everything so the event runs very smoothly and everybody's comfortable. An enviro writer is a type of writer that connects to the environment, and it's meant to lessen the environmental footprint of a particular group, ensemble, performer, so on and so forth. So when U2 was touring with their 360 tour, they had a number of things in their enviro writer. They had agreed to use reusable water bottles for the concert crew. They had recycling bins in backstage offices. They collected food scraps and then composted those. They recycled ink cartridges, and they reduced their vehicle fleet by 10%. So reducing, they were reusing and recycling. So that was a little over 10 years ago. It would be very interesting to see what kinds of enviro writers are existing today. I've pulled this information from an article by the scholar named Mark Peddlety, and he talks about how these are good things to do, but it doesn't necessarily offset what is being done when they are carting around all of their equipment. It really illustrates kind of the enormity of the problem, even as they try to solve it. So I wanted you to see what the tour looked like in terms of the stage setup, because it is gargantuan. It's an industrial kind of stage setup, as you can already see from this still image here. There's a big steel structure in the middle that's I think around 150 feet tall, and the stage actually has bridges that rotate around, but it obviously is going to take quite a bit of equipment to move this equipment around the world, not just around one particular country. So let me start this and jump to about 2 minutes and just give you a little taste of what this looks like from different angles. So the concern here is really with the visual. You can see that it's a very large set. You can see that this particular stadium setting has thousands of people in it. And so there's just going to be a lot of carbon footprint particular concert. Before we go into a sound walk, I thought I had one more slide left. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Anybody that is touring or creating music in any place is going to leave some kind of carbon footprint. And so, as I mentioned, it'll be very interesting to see how enviro writers, it's very hard to say, what they look like in the future. It would be great to try to get my hands on some today, but those are very often closely held documents. In the meantime, I'm curious if you know of any artists that are making a very clear kind of environmental stance or supporting any sort of cause or making a public kind of statement about the environment. So marrying their musical.
Well, they
art.
definitely do, because
Yeah.
they submitted their Unit 1 projects.
So, okay, I was not privy to these projects. Tell me what you did in your projects or who these artists are.
Lindsay, go ahead.
So my artists, they didn't have a like environmental stance or anything, but one of them I did was for King Country, which is a Christian group.
Yep.
And they released an album with Burn the Ships on it, which the song was based around it's two brothers, and one of their wives was struggling with addiction post-pregnancy with morning sickness pills. So the whole song is based around burning that bridge basically and cutting ties with the addiction and stuff. And it was from a moment when his wife decided to finally like flush the pills down the toilet, and he related it back to Hernando Cortez, I believe, and his whole thing with burning the ships on the beach to get his crew to move and explore the new land that they had discovered.
Interesting. That sounds like an interesting song. Any other examples? What else did you turn in for your projects?
How about Cindy Chen?
I did a song. It was We Are the World by USA for Africa. And that song was to raise funds for the famine in Ethiopia. So I did that song.
Great. One more example. I want one more person to tell me about their awesome project.
All right, Kevin.
I did two songs. My first song was Naked by Lizzo, and basically it's her own like anthem of self-love and body positivity that she's been preaching throughout her career. And my second song was Earth by Lil Dicky, and he released it a couple years ago. And it was a song featuring a bunch of really popular artists at the time, like Ariana Grande and Justin Bieber and a bunch of others. and it basically raised like millions of dollars for climate change and NGOs and nonprofits supporting the effort against climate change.
Fantastic. It's great to have these very big name artists working in a way to better the planet, whether it is through raising money for a specific cause or going out and maybe even planting a tree themselves. The U2 tour that I mentioned, the 360 tour, there was a firm from the United Kingdom that did a study or did an estimate that it would take about 20,000 trees to offset the carbon footprint of U2's tour. And so it makes it, like I said, a huge difference when you have these public facing figures working to try and make a difference instead of just presenting their art, but using their art as a vehicle for change or for a cause. Okay, in the last 10 minutes that we have today, or 9 minutes, I want to introduce one last concept. And it might also sound a little bit out of the box. So I started out of the box, I'm going to end a little bit out of the box. And it's something called a sound walk. So let me give you a couple of definitions here or descriptions. A sound walk is any excursion whose main purpose is listening to the environment. So again, listening. It is exposing our ears to every sound around us, no matter where we are. It is an exploration of our ear and environment relationship, unmediated by microphones, headphones, and recording equipment. It is an exploration of what the naked ear hears and how we relate and react to it. And these are quotes from Hildegard Westerkamp. She is someone that identifies as a composer, but also a radio artist and a sound ecologist. She lectures, she performs, she writes, she presents workshops. She really thinks about soundscapes in addition to sound walking, the environment and the sound that it makes and how we interact with it. So I've adapted a sound walk from some of her work, and I want to try that in this online medium. So there's a picture of Hildegard. I forgot I put that in there, but she's recording some natural sounds. What we're going to do as an exercise is different than what I would do with my students in my Quest class. We do something similar where my Quest class is in person. And so it will be interesting to see how you experience this online. I've not tried it online through any sort of virtual medium. But then I also take my students who want to go in a group instead of by themselves. We take a walk around campus, and that's also a very different kind of experience. But let's go ahead and try this, and we'll have a quick discussion after we do the exercise. So what I would like for you to do is actually close your eyes. I want you to focus inward and listen inward. Listen to the sounds of your body. Now listen to the sounds of your body while moving your head, your hands, your feet. These sounds are closest to you and establish the first dialogue between you and the environment. Now, try to move without making any sound. Is it possible? Listen for the quietest sound of your body. Now, lead your ears away from your own sounds. If you've got headphones on, take one headphone off so that you're hearing more in the space around you. Listen to the sounds nearby. What do you hear? Make a list in your mind. Now, lead your ears away from those sounds and try to listen beyond. Try to find the quietest sound that you can hear. Hopefully your eyes are still closed, and if they are, you can open them. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions. And actually, to do this, nope, never mind. I am going to stop sharing because I want to see your faces. So let's start with this one. Was it possible to move without making any sound? When you were moving your hands or your head or your feet, was it possible to move without making any sound? I see Kaylee shaking her head no. Chase is giving me kind of like, What kinds of sounds did your body make?
Mine, like my wrists crack and my ankles and all that stuff. So
Same over here. I had wrists that were cracking. I would expect my toes to crack, but they're in my shoes. So my ankles were cracking. Did anybody hear their own heartbeat?
when we weren't, or when I wasn't moving, I've heard my own heartbeat, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense.
Because I was more paying attention to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm keeping an eye on time. We've got 3 minutes left. How or what did you hear outside of your body? You could throw even just a single word in the chat. I'll throw one because I'm in my office here and I heard something I don't typically think of, but makes total sense. AC. Yeah, I expected to hear my AC because it is frigid in my office. Or my AC. I heard traffic outside my window. I'm also by the Florida pool, so I very often hear whistles, but I did not hear them today. Another person with cars, couple with traffic, birds chirping. Cindy, I'd like to be where you are because that sounds relaxing. The fridge. Oh, I like that, Kevin. My fridge makes noise too. In fact, my toddler often questions what is going on with the fridge because of the noises it makes. A fan, an elevator. Oh, I love it. These are wonderful and various, which makes sense since we are all in different places. Good. So why might sound walking be significant? Like, why should we do it?
Well, I say for a large majority of the world, we communicate with our ears. I mean, we have 2 ears, so
Yep.
we have one mouth, so we should probably be listening more than talking since we have 2 ears and one mouth. Right?
I like that. That's good. Oh, go ahead, Kaylee.
I was gonna say like mindfulness. Like I feel like especially me, I'm very thinking in past or future and never in the present. So like listening to the things that were going on around me was like being very present and focusing on that.
Yeah. No, I've had a lot of students say it gives them a sense of calm, but it also heightens their listening at the same time, which kind of corresponds with what Kaylee was talking about. Let me share my screen one more time. Sound walking, I think, can be very good, healthy thing to do. It does make us listen in a different kind of way if you're actually actively listening. And I love how we have one mouth and 2 ears. So maybe we should use those ears a little bit more. Hildegard Westerkamp, when she's describing the significance of sound walking, she says, when attentive listening becomes a daily practice, requesting sound quality becomes a natural activity. This may be reflected in simple actions like not playing the radio all day long, using a hand lawnmower instead of a power mower, buying quieter machinery, requesting to turn off disturbing sounds, helping to preserve quiet areas in our city, and staying aware of our own acoustic actions and of our collective responsibility for the sonic environment. So I will leave you with is a slide that highlights some places that you might consider taking a sound walk. It will maybe encourage you to listen in a more attentive way. It may be just a way to decompress, which is never a bad thing. But there are a lot of green spaces around campus, and I'm going to point out several to you. Some you may know of, some you may not. So more on the west side, there's the Harmonic Woods. And then south of that, covered up, because I know I'm using a library map here, covered up is the University Gardens. I have actually taken a walk in the University Gardens. You have to be careful. Sometimes it gets a little wet, but it's a nice area. Graham Woods near some of the dormitories. We have over here the Bartram Carr Woods. I like those. I've hiked or walked in those a lot. And then the Wrights Ravine is a very short kind of walk, but it's also a very good one by the Union. Over here is McCarty Woods. And then there's some wetlands, the digital design wetlands here. So with that, I will leave you. And I'm trying to leave you, hopefully, giving you ways to sound the alarm by asking yourself to pay more attention, appreciating the world around you, listening attentively, taking opportunities as they come to support causes, and engage with environmentally aware music making, but also cultural and social events. I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Spectacular. Thank you. Thank you so much. What a fabulous presentation. And with that, see you, everybody.
Have a great afternoon.